Hey yo, it's your boy Angel Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew, and today we have an interesting topic to discuss. Dean, what are we talking about today?
What grinds our gears? That kind of stuff that just works a nerve, the last functional nerve that you might have in your head or on your shoulder, or like, in the proverbial crack of your such and such, you know. Yeah, we're here to talk about that, and these are the things that just get to us from day to day when it comes to gaming and stuff like that, or the gaming community, or people who are not in the gaming community and want to, talk about it, whatever the case may be. So, leading us into this, we're going to let everything start off with our buddy Spigs, 18 down there, otherwise known as Anthony. Anthony, what's the topic of grinding your gears today?
I don't want to start off negative, but I'm gonna be negative. You know what grinds my gears, fellas? I hate with a passion the misconception and misinformation non-gamers have about gamers. Let me tell you a little story, right? I keep a foam D20 on my desk in my office that I got at Gen Con. You was with me, Dean, when I bought the foam D20.
Yeah.
But, and it's a good conversation piece. And we were having a meeting in my office. This happened about, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. And someone picked up the D20 and, like most people do, they roll it and they go, hey, what's that? And I started explaining to them, first of all, that we run Cypher Unlimited and, what Cypher Unlimited is. And then, at first it was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then you see the weird looks you get when you try to explain role play to someone. And then it became, oh, let me get this straight. It's like Dungeons and Dragons. I'm saying, yeah, sort of. That is a role-playing game, yes, And then it was like, oh, so do you dress up like fairies and hit each other with foam? Well, that's called cosplay, and some people do that, but me personally, that's usually not my shtick. But whatever. If people like to do that, they like to do that. Oh, so you kill imaginary dragons? Do you play pretend?
Oh my god.
And I'm like, oh, come on, dude. It's a hobby like any other hobby. Like, I don't understand it. What's the difference between someone that enjoys hanging out with their friends and coming up with a great adventure, rolling some dice, maybe having some beers, eating some chicken wings, or what have you? It's no different than getting together with your friends and one playing fantasy football.
I was just gonna
fantasy
mention that
football.
later, wasn't it?
I was getting ready to say,
What's the difference?
look,
It has fantasy in the title.
I've had the same argument on many of occasions. I remember the jocks in high school when they used to try to make jokes, because I was a football player too, and they want to, oh, I said, but you play fantasy football, right? Yeah, but that's different. Well, how's it different? All you're doing is grabbing a newspaper, pulling up statistics, figuring out what's the best approach to get maximum return on your fantasy team. Oh, you know.
Oh, not this one so much, but you guys remember this too. Remember the 80s, early 80s,
Not me.
mid 80s.
I was not alive.
The whole if you played role playing games, you were somehow opening up a portal to Satan and to demonic worship.
Listen,
They just switched it from, okay, it's no longer demonic worship, but now you're playing fairy tale games or you're playing
yeah,
imagination like kids. And it's kind of played out. D&D in particular, but role playing in general is mainstream now. So people should be a little more open when someone says, hey, I'm a gamer, or I play role playing games. And what I hate is, like, I don't want my daughter who's getting into gaming now, I don't want her to ever to feel like just because she likes rolling dice and playing pretend that it's something to be ashamed about. So I think that's really what makes me grind my gears.
well, and in the same voice with that, let's just take it a little step further. There are some really successful, wealthy people out there who do the same thing. They're called actors. you know and there are even actors. And I could just name a few that people know: Joe Mantegna
Mhm.
or Mattiel, whatever how you pronounce
Vin
his name.
Diesel, of course,
Vin Diesel, big name.
John
Deborah
Lithgow,
Deborah Ann Wall. Uh, what's the guy? The
Stephen
whole
Colbert,
Stephen Colbert. I couldn't think of his name. So
Tim Duncan.
the list goes on and on of people who have sat down and rolled these dice and enjoyed this pastime and become very successful. And people who might want to go into acting or something like this is a perfect place to, uh, get your chops, start practicing your craft.
Not, not even on an acting level. Role playing can help you in many aspects of your life. It helps you with self confidence,
Socialization,
public speaking, mathematics. It helps you on so many different levels. Critical thinking. There's so many different levels that role playing can help you. Writing.
If you want to,
I'll be
if you
100%
want,
honest.
if you ever want to direct a movie, or you ever want to write a screenplay, guess what? Becoming a game master, dungeon master, whatever title you wear, storyteller, right then and there, hey, you're doing it. You're crafting worlds.
I'll be 100% honest. If it wasn't for comic books and role playing games, I wouldn't be the reader that I am today because it made me want to read.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
on the flip side, there, I actually had misconceptions about role playing.
Oh, you one of those guys.
Because I didn't get into the whole thing until later. I actually Anthony introduced me to all this stuff, and before that, even though he introduced me with D&D, D&D is really all I knew about. Like I didn't know about Savage Worlds or GURPS or Cypher System or Numenera or whatever have you, and thinking about it, way back then, I always thought of it as, you're going to sit down at a table, there's going to be a gridded thing, there's going to be tokens, there's going to be a lot of rules involved. And that was my misconception there, where, we had people, you're going to sit at a table and someone's going to be reading from a book and be like, oh, wait, no, you can't do that because it says in the book here that, you can't do that. And that was honestly a conception that I had, or misconception that I had way back before I actually got into Cypher System. And, it happens, but thankfully, Anthony introduced me to something other than D&D, and I was able to see that that's not the case. It just isn't. Yeah.
So Al, tell us about your gear grind, or is it my turn to talk about what?
I think it'll be yours, Dean. What grinds your gears, Dean?
Lots of things, but in particular, those people who are into gaming or into the gaming community, and they just don't seem to have the withdraw or the acumen, to take constructive criticism. They'll come to you, ask you for advice, because you've been doing this for a long time, or someone says that you might be a bit of have a bit of knowledge on something, or whatever the case may be. But you give them some constructive criticism. You tell them, about how they could better their game or whatever, and they fight you on it. Just, oh my God. And it's so frustrating. But then the caveat to that just takes it to a whole nother level is then, 2 or 3 months later, especially like if you're like in a community or something, and you've told these people these things, and then the next thing you know, they're giving somebody else your advice verbatim. Oh my God.
It's definitely a thing that happens.
I could totally relate. And I think most GMs are probably, self-conscious about their work, no matter how good they are. I'm pretty sure, Grant Ellis, these guys that are pretty, well-known GMs, Matthew Mercer, they have some self-doubt every time they sit down, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be human. I would guess. And a lot of times people want to bounce their ideas off people in the community, off us, or random people over Twitter or Facebook or Reddit, what have you. But they're not actually seeking critique. What they're seeking is positive reinforcement and validation that their ideas are good.
Oh,
And I have to be honest, I'm not being funny, but you know what? The only way to become good at it, the only way to be validated in this arena is to get out there and do it.
Absolutely.
You know what? I always want, what I do to be accepted. I love when people say, "Hey, that was awesome. Hey, that was a great time." I love when people come back and ask me to do it again. You know, so I'm very conscientious of what I'm doing, what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, and people. It's just the biggest frustration in the world when you have people who can't listen. Trust me, guys. Yeah, I've been doing this gaming thing for over 40 years. And I've had some people say, hey, you know, that was a little bit, lowbrow, or you know what, you need to be careful because you might offend someone with this type of thought process, or hey, that was insensitive. It took time, and it takes a little bit of uh, humbleness, to walk in this arena, and you really need to be humble and take what's given to you, because you know what, in my 40 years I've learned a lot, and I plan on to be playing this game for like another 60 years. um yeah, I don't I'm going to be a century old. That's my goal. But at any rate, I plan on getting more advice and getting more. I love when people come to me and tell me something. You give me an accolade, or you give me a critique. Trust me, I'm taking that information and I'm going to use it the next time. I've learned from these guys. Al talks about he doesn't have the history or the that we do, but guess what? I learn from this guy all the time. It's awesome. I learn from Anthony all the time.
I learn more from newer GMs than I do from experienced GMs, because an experienced GM is going to give you a narrative, and is going to give you a cohesive story most of the time from the jump. An inexperienced GM is learning on the fly. So you learn more from your personal failures and from others' failures. So when you play in those games, they're not necessarily bad experiences, but you could see where they did something exceptionally well and not even notice it, but you
Mhm.
notice it, and you could adapt what they did to your own style. Or when they did something really bad, and how one, your mind starts thinking how you would have avoided that, or how you would have corrected it, auto corrected
Mhm.
it on the spot, right? And that, you learn more from failure in anything in life. You learn more from failure than you do. So I prefer when I run a game, and you know 100% honest, we all run clunkers. Nobody could sit here and say they've never ran a clunker before.
oh
But
boy.
Right.
I learn more from those critiques, from those bad games, than I ever do from a game that runs smoothly and everyone seems to have a great time and you have nothing but positive feedback. I prefer to hear the critique.
Right.
And
And
unfortunately, most people don't like to hear critique. It is what it is.
And
what are you gonna say?
no, I was just gonna say that when what it really boils down to is what you said before is like just do it. Like people want to talk and talk and talk, but when it comes to the end of the day, what really helps you out is just doing it. Like you can go back and forth about advice and whatever all day long, but it doesn't mean anything if you're not doing it.
Right. My wife always says that, until you do something, it's just an idea.
Yeah. Yeah, theory crafting is all well and good, but if it's never implicated or actually put into motion, that's all it is. It's theory crafting.
Right.
Indeed.
So,
Mm.
and Al,
All
what
right.
grinds your gears?
So what really grinds my gears, and anyone on the server has heard me probably say this a couple times, is rules lawyering at the table.
Wait a minute. You entered wrong. Maybe you should go back and do it, and like smile.
Wait,
I was
what?
just I was just rule lawyering you.
Oh my god, rules lawyering my fucking video. But either way, Yeah, so what I was saying is, while I was so rudely interrupted by a rules lawyer, is that basically happens at the table where someone's running a game, whether they be a new GM or an experienced GM, they'll have someone at their table who thinks they know better, and they'll have their book next to them or whatever on their phone or whatever have you, and something happens at the table and they're like, oh no no no, wait a second, it actually you didn't move 5 feet that way, and your bow only shoots 20 feet that way, like it's really all up to the GM at the table to decide whether something flows or not. And that really grinds my gears because, especially with newer GMs, I feel like that kind of like put a damper on their mood. The whole table actually, where people are trying to enjoy a narrative or story or gameplay or whatever have you, and then we got Mr. Know-It-All over here in the corner saying, with his book open. Wait a second, guys. Doesn't say that in the book here that you can do that. The book is more of a guideline, not a Bible. You want to use it to kind of help you guide your actions and the game along, not use it verbatim to say, hey, wait a second, like you didn't move 10 feet that way, so you were not allowed to use that ability or whatever have you. And again, that really grinds my gears because it just kind of, again, it slows the game down. If there's a new GM at the table, they kind of feel horrible because, oh shit, I didn't get it right. Like, but there's no right or wrong really. It's just how you want to run it. If you want to do something that goes against the book, just do it. It doesn't. Again, if you have that guy at the table that's going to start the arguing about that rule call, again, it just slows things down, and that really grinds my gears. Like, just be quiet and let the GM do his thing. Like,
Well, and I have to say thank you to these guys right here because I was running the game and ran into just such a person. And before I could even,
I got a
even
big mouth. I'm sorry.
even before I could even address the situation, these guys, the group descended on him like a flock of pigeons in a McDonald's parking lot on a French fry. I swear to goodness, it was like 7 pigeons on one rat trying to get a French fry, and they beat him senseless. And it was just so beautiful because nobody said anything rude or bad or anything else. They just took everything he said and shifted it around the table till it came back, and I could be the GM again and continue the story. It didn't break immersion or anything else. The funniest part about it was like the guy almost like had his character commit suicide because he just couldn't take it. It was awesome. You had to be there, but for me, I'm with Al. Cipher System does something that is beautiful, and Charles Ryan wrote it in an article. And yeah, we should find a link for that article and post it beneath. Anthony.
Yeah, I'll post it on one.
But the article basically stated, the article said this, and it was probably the most brilliant thing I've read about any RPG. The rules in Cipher System are designed for the players, not the GM. That was awesome because Cipher System frees you as a GM. If you think about it, we don't have to worry about rolling dice. Our mechanics are setting levels and difficulty numbers. We're allowed to not break immersion worrying about rules. And I think that is one of the most brilliant, wonderful aspects about Cipher. Why, to this day, you ask me what my go-to system is, the Cipher System. I'll run anything in Cipher System, and yeah.
that's exactly what. Oh, go on.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's exactly what drew me to Cypher System. Like, I was kind of into D&D, but again, all that rule stuff kind of muddied my not experience, but like my joy of it, I guess. And then when Anthony introduced me to Cypher System, I was like, whoa, there's like it's rules light and enforces a narrative, and again, as a GM, you can really focus on that story instead of like focusing on looking up a rule like for trying to walk a certain distance and like trying to shoot a certain weapon or trying to take a certain action. Whereas us as a GM, like, oh, you want to do this? Oh, it's a difficulty 3. Oh, you want to do that? Oh, it's a difficulty 4. And it's really streamlined to just trying to get that narrative going, as opposed to you're looking up each and every scenario in a book to make sure you're getting it right.
I have two takes on rules lawyering, and I'm 100% in agreement with what the both of you guys said. Absolutely. And D knows because I was the one that actually started the whole "hey, stop rules lawyering" argument at your game. But I will say this: there's two kinds of rules lawyers, and and let's be fair to the kind of rules lawyer that's actually positive at the table. Sometimes it's good to have one person at the table that's gonna make sure that we get major rules correctly. But what I mean by that is not interrupting during play, but on downtimes to say, hey, whoever it was, hey Al, later for next time, we should be doing it this way because this way this makes a little more sense. And then not stopping mid game. Also, there's when you have a lot of newer players, it's good to have an experienced player that we can refer to and say, hey, what's the rule for this? I mean, that may not come into play so much for us with Cypher system, but with other systems, like, Pathfinder, D&D, other systems that we may not be as comfortable with the rules, it's good to have someone at the table as a GM that you can refer to when you're not sure about a major rule that might be important to the story.
So in that case, it's not a rules lawyer. That's a rules mediator.
Yes, but it kind of falls in the same category. But with that said, hold on a sec. With that said, that's the positive. Now I'm going to go to the freaking negative, that grinds my gear negative. The person that his sole intention in a game is to pinpoint how knowledgeable they are about the rule set, at the expense of the narrative, at the expense of the story moving forward, at the expense of the GM. It's basically, hey, I know more than you. Screw you if you don't want to listen to me, because this is how it was written. It's on page 237. If you don't believe me, look it up. That person, and there's a difference.
There's a major difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's a difference suggesting something. Then you have the guy that's a rules lawyer only for his benefit, not for the group. Is, hey, I want to do this broken thing, and I'm going to find 7 different rules that allows me to do this broken thing, and I'm going to complain about it until the GM relents and lets me do this broken thing that no one else at the table could do, because I have 8 books with 7 different references, and I'm going to jam it down your throat.
And that guy, that's the guy that will get pissed off with me, because that's when the old adage comes up. Because, see, I don't care anymore. I'm old, and I've been gaming a long time, and that's when I look at you and go, no.
This is straight up, no. That's not happening.
You know what's funny? I just recently watched I think it was like a 1981 or 1980 Gary Gygax interview. And someone asked him, the early stages of D&D, people would literally call his house like constantly every day and asking, when he had the chain, just asking rules questions. And he said something that was funny. He said his response was always the same thing. What did you do?
Yeah.
So that right there is telling you that the GM is still responsible for keeping the game going and not worrying about the rules. So the whole concept of a rules lawyer, shouldn't exist. If the guy who invented the hobby wasn't using rules as written in the very beginning of the game.
Right.
Facts.
And look, just one little thing I need to add to this, and it might be considered another thing that grinds the gears, but I think it goes right along with the rules lawyers. And it's the player character, it's the min-maxer. Oh.
That's essentially a rules lawyer making a character.
I cannot stand the min-maxer, and that's another reason why I love Cypher System, because the whole thought process of min-maxing, out the window. There's really no such thing as min-maxing. It's basically building your character. If the narrative of your character is, hey, I'm a spell slinging, songwriting, monkey loving, Toreador, or Matador, or whatever, that's what you can be. And guess what? It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference if your intellect is a 7 and your might is a 20, or your speed is 3, and it doesn't make a difference. All of those things, because what you build is what you built. And then the narrative takes you on the ride you wanted to go on.
I'm not necessarily against min maxers. Like, as a GM, I don't care. Like, irrelevant. You could be a min maxer. I'll just jack up all the different.
It ruins it for the other people who may not be min maxing.
Yeah, that's the problem. If you
that's what bugs me.
But if you have a table, and I will say this too, like, if you have a table of 5 min maxers, you can have a good game.
No, for sure.
The problem comes up is when you have one min maxer with 3 non-min maxers, and then you have the imbalance. But, like, I don't know, and I know, Dean, I know you min maxed at one point of your. Everybody that starts off at first set on third edition, especially if you start off at any of those editions, min maxing is actually like ingrained in your thought process, because those Pathfinder, those systems are designed to be min maxed. So, like, I don't necessarily, like, I wouldn't hate a min-max as much as I do a rules lawyer, because sometimes I think that's how they learned how to play, and they're not taught otherwise. You know what I mean? So I don't really fault them that much, even though sometimes it does annoy me. I don't really fault people for being min-maxes. And sometimes, let's keep it real, too. Sometimes it is pretty fun when you create an optimal combat character. Is that my cup of tea? Probably not.
The broken. If, like you said, if it's a table full of that going on, that's one thing. If I know we're gonna go play,
Pathfinder,
or this new competition RPG sports or something. If I was gonna, I'm a min max, and we're gonna go out there and we're going to obliterate the world. But that's what we're there for. But I'm saying the ones that do it, like you said, in the middle of a game, and you've got a bunch of newbies, and then you got the one experienced guy, and he wants to min-max out, and then, nobody else can have fun because they're not effective. But if I beef everything up to compensate for the min-max guy, then again, they're not effective. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
You have people try to min-max a Cypher, though, because I know your guy, you're all run games. We all run multiple games with strangers every week, all the time. And I've seen those guys that show up to one of my one-shots with zero skills. Everything is abilities, and only combat focus abilities. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but see, that's the beautiful part about Cypher, though. You can come to the table like that. You can still play. You can still have a good time, but you learn immediately that there's more to Cypher system than the numbers on a sheet of paper, and I think that's one of the best and most brilliant aspects of what Monte Cook did, with this system, and I have to say, too, after my experience with Invisible Sun is a lot more of that, I mean, it is a D20, a D10 system, and there's some different, mechanics there, but very similar, very smooth, very, very narrative driven. And, I think there are other games out there that are narrative driven. Don't get me wrong, Powered by the Apocalypse, Fate, those things. But honestly, Cypher system has just married the right amount of crunch, and the fact that it's modular. You can plug in, unplug, you can take a rule and modify it to do something else that the game didn't originally do. Those things are awesome. And so the gear grinding is just when people, try to take the fun out of it. I think that's probably what the biggest gear grinder of them all is, when you're trying to take the fun out of it and turn it into, a theory class, a math class,
I always like to, before Al takes us out, I always like to ask a question that we didn't speak about at all to catch us surprise. So since we've been negative with all the stuff that we don't like, all the stuff that grinds our gears, I'll start off with Al. Tell me something that you enjoy about gaming or the gaming community a positive note that we could end these videos with?
I mean, we kind of touched on it already. Is just having people at the table who understand that it's a narrative thing that we're trying to push forward, and not focus on those rules. That like, if something happens during a game, and let's say a new GM or even an experienced GM, they get some little rule kind of wrong at the time, even if it's not the end of the world. It's always awesome that no one harps on it. No one like, oh, you didn't do this right. We got to go back. We got to retroactively fix what you messed up. And that's what I love, when people just let that stuff wash over them, and then at the end of the game or during a break or something, when you're using the bathroom or having snack break or whatever have you, then like we said before, was that's when you bring that stuff up. Like that sort of player, that's like, I love that stuff, because they do help. Like you said, they're like the rules mediator. They'll tell you, hey, you did this way, but when we continue, might make more sense to do it that way. And that's something I love a lot. They help the game go forward, but they're not obstructive about it. There's no like slowing down the immersion or the narrative progression, and that's something I find A+.
How about you, Al?
You mean
Give
Dean?
us, how about you, Dean? Give us a positive of gaming.
I love a lot of things about gaming. I love the aha moments. I love it when it just hits a person. When they finally hit their rhythm, they hit their groove. Whether they're a game master or a player, and you see the wheels start turning, you see the lights come on, you see basically the lights come on, and the theme music starts in the background. That's that. You see that moment, and that, I think that is probably just one of the best moments in gaming that you could ever have. I love it, and I'm just gonna give you an example, and then I'll be done with it. But I remember my wife, who never played an RPG in her life, never touched them. She knew about Dungeons and Dragons on the periphery, and I mean very peripheral. And when we got together, 4 years ago, of course, I introduced her to D&D, introduced her to this role-playing game and that one. But it was playing Cypher System, and we're playing, and she was playing an adept who was it glowed with radiance or something like that focus. And we were playing, and she was real tentative and timid about everything. And then I don't know, just the lights clicked on, because we were playing in a modern horror thing, and there were vampires. And she was like, you said in the description that it was like my character, radiated like, something akin to sunlight, right? I said, yeah, but it is sunlight. It, has all the properties. And you can see the lights and the wheels. And she's like, ooh.
That's awesome.
If we set up these mirrors in the room and reflect the light all over the place, and if I do a flash, would it like get the vampires? I'm like, yeah,
Of course.
And she's like, I want to do that, And it was just fun, and it was great because, and then even better in the payoff was she rolled a 20.
Oh.
So, that was that moment. It was over. It was done. She was hooked. Now fast forward 4 years later, we bought No Thank You Evil. She's run her grandbabies, in No Thank You Evil games. Now this is a person who had never played RPGs up until, you came, her and I got together, and she's embraced my hobby. And, it's just like, honey, enjoy, do what you want, I'll come play sometimes, but you have fun. So
That is such an awesome story, Dean. Seriously.
yeah.
I truly thank you for telling me that story. That I got the feels on that.
It was awesome. It's one of my favorite moments. So
I think
and you?
my positive, like Dean, I've been gaming 25 plus years, and there's so much that I love about the hobby, so much. But the thing I think that I'm most positive of me is how recently, within the last 5-10 years, we have this whole influx of new gamers and the inclusivity of the hobby now that wasn't before. Now it doesn't matter what race, color, creed, sex, how you identify yourself as. Everyone is so accepting now. It wasn't always the case, It was
This is the platinum age of D&D, of gaming.
absolutely, and I just love that I'm getting to sit down and game with such a diverse group of people every day on the server. And I may not, we may never know each other. We're gaming over the internet. We may live entirely different lives for whatever reasons. But when we sit at the table, we become one cohesive unit telling a story, and none of that matters. None of that matters whatsoever.
Yes.
It's such a beautiful thing. I wish the world could learn from a gaming table.
Yeah, they
You,
could.
Sure.
it doesn't matter. Like, why is there so much hate? We could tell stories together. Let's get the world leaders in the UN with some D20 books. Let's make it happen. But I just can't see. I can't see a better time in gaming right now, and I'm thankful.
People say the oldest profession is prostitution, but I'll say the oldest profession is actually storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely.
And taking nothing from
And Dean was
anyone.
around when the first storyteller told me the story.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Listen, what did Grant Ellis tell you? Did he not tell you I was the Aslan of gaming? Okay, he told you guys this. So do not speak to me of the RPG. I was there when it was written.
We busted chops, Dean. We love you.
Hey, I love you guys, and I take it in stride.
But
Wouldn't have it any other way.
yeah, that was an awesome talk. We ended
Yeah, this
on
was actually really good.
on a nice note. Anthony always throwing us for a loop with those questions that we never discussed before the video, which is awesome because keeps us on our toes. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Be sure to like, share, and you have something else to say, Dean?
December 7th. Yes, I do this on every video, and I will continue to do this. December 7th. Let me say it one more time so everybody hears me. December 7th, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Darcy Ross, Cypher Unlimited crew, big giveaway, all sorts of things. We've got stuff from Raven's Desk with the
Vert.
With Vert. We've got some of our own personal supplements and things like that. Gonza Gaming's giving up stuff. And of course, Monty Cook Games. Be there, be there, be there. There is no being square. Just be there.
And you check the doobly-doo below, and if you haven't joined the Cypher Unlimited Discord server, that's the way you can enter and win one of these prizes. The link will be down below, and you can easily join, and hope to see you there and hope to give you a prize.
And yeah, we'll also have links to the article that was mentioned before about GMing. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. It's been a pleasure as usual. So yeah, from us at the CU, we will see you later.